This is for team, let me see, 1870 Consulting at 4 p.m. I am the senior judge for this session. My name is Intisar Durham. I am an engineer. I am retired a few times, a couple of times, and I still do part-time consulting to a large engineering firm. And if we could go around the table, so we'll go to Timothy right now to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name's Timothy McKernan. I am a retired U.S. Army colonel. I spent a little over 27 years in the military, and I currently am a small business owner running Airbnb and a small catering business.
Awesome. Tom?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Maddie. I'm based in San Francisco. I live downtown about 3 blocks from Salesforce Tower, if you know San Francisco. I am an executive business coach and leadership development. I've been doing this for about 6 years officially, and before that unofficially, when I was running global teams with large money center banks on Wall Street. My expertise, subject matter expert there, was international, and so I have a very strong international background. And before that, I was on Capitol Hill with the Foreign Affairs Committee. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's very nice to have you. Actually, I was in San Francisco last week, and I'm going this week. I'll be having meetings at 1 California Street.
It's close by. Good, and your timing's good because this week is going to be beautiful.
Been beautiful.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
can't complain. Cheryl, your turn.
I have an accounting background. I graduated with a degree in accounting, and I started out in one of the big 8 when there were 8 large firms. And then I've worked in private industry the rest of my career in institutional real estate and portfolio and asset management and client servicing. And more recently, I went back when I had my son late in life, and I went back and I was a CFO for a real estate investor and also a sports team owner. And now I work on my own and I consult helping companies, that need accounting work, because I'm basically just wanting to be more flexible with my schedule. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you. Alonzo?
Cheryl, you and I should probably talk afterwards. I'm a real estate and mortgage broker. I've been for about 20 years, business major and second time involved in this competition. I really enjoyed the first time and I'm glad I'm back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to have you, and thank you all for participating. And now for the team, if we could have the team on. Is that Moses? You're on. Okay, I have just a brief statement to make about instructions on how this presentation is supposed to go, and then I will give you the floor and you could introduce your team at that time. So please note that this is part of a competition. You're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges as well. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes. I will be timing you. You'll have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 fronts. When you are finished, we are going to have 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. We are still with our, fictional business identity. After the formal Q&A session ends, we would be very happy to give you personal feedback on how the presentation went. And here you are. The floor is yours, Moises.
Thank you. My name is Moises Mendez, and I'm from Chicago, current MBA student at Loyola University, Chicago.
We're part of the 1870 consulting team.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I thought you asked us to introduce ourselves as well.
And your team.
As part of the consulting team.
As part of the consulting team. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Welcome, Meta Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be diving deeper into our proposal, Mind Your Matters Meta, building safe social media communities. As you know, we're representing 1870 Consulting. My name is Taylor, and joining me today are my colleagues, Kara, Anna, and Moy. We are a upcoming and new consulting firm that puts people first. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so the problem. Youth mental health concerns with an increase in social media use and data mining has led to growing legal lawsuits. We've been having these conversations. The profits gained by advertising using minors' data is going to be negligible if these lawsuits, alleged violations of privacy laws, and exploitations of users under 18 continue, and it will further damage Meta's brand. This increase in this intertwined mental health and social media dilemma is not just a youth problem, it's a social media platform problem that Meta and its competitors are facing right now. So what's the solution? Become the leading platform that values users. This will encourage lifelong members and at the same time preempt legislative regulations. So how is this going to be done? Meta is going to set the standard. The first step we recommend will be implementing age-based data mining and advertising restrictions to those who are under 18. Meta will need to make an initial financial investment to implement this solution. However, Meta will also be able to promote that it's investing in its users long term. There's a growing demand for mental health friendly platforms, and this will position you for future growth, giving Meta a first mover advantage to self-regulate the industry and your competitors. To help build a foundation for our discussion later, here's our agenda, or what we call it in the metaverse, the feed. With our first topic being well-being. There's a saying that too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and that's now being said about social media use. Too much of it has shown to cause harm to one's well-being, and that has been linked to negative impacts like mental illnesses and even suicide. Managing social media usage in particular has become a higher priority, especially among vulnerable audiences. An example, Black and Hispanic teens are more likely than white teens to say that they've been online constantly, almost constantly, according to the Pew Research Center survey. Designed with the ease of use with targeted advertising built in with one's data, many are beginning to point the blame to the designers of these platforms, as studies share its addictive and predatory nature for all ages. And it could be said that those concerns are only for those who use social media. However, as of 2021, over 4.5 billion people had a social media account. That's nearly half the world, and that's expected to rise as the technology becomes even more accessible. So let's back up and define well-being and what it can mean for Meta. According to a publication that was developed for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, shows that most experts and ordinary people around the world would agree that well-being requires meeting various human needs, some of which are essential, like good health, as well as the ability to pursue one's goals and thrive and feel satisfied with their life. What we need to do at Meta is distinguish between the well-being of today and the well-being of tomorrow. The platform puts the emphasis on building community, yet the foundation of the community is the individuals. Meta's success is contingent on the long-term success of the community. According to the World Health Organization, the consequences of failing to address adolescent mental health conditions extend into adulthood impairing both physical and mental health and limiting opportunities to lead fulfilling lives. As more studies shift the blame onto platforms causing mental health issues, especially in today's youth, it will be the platform who can nurture and value the well-being of our online communities that will overcome this challenge. The World Health Organization also states that there is no health without mental health. 1817 Consulting thinks that there's no meta without its community, and a community built on an increasing amount of individuals struggling with mental health will not foster a sustainable future nor profit for Meta. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Kara, to dive deeper into values.
So let's talk about who Meta is at the core. Meta, your company has a beautiful mission to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together, built on the values of connecting people, finding community, and growing businesses. However, the negative implications social media is having on minors' mental health is actually preventing this from happening. In fact, this will limit your mission and values by limiting your growth. And as a review, Meta, your code of ethics says all of these really powerful statements. The ones I want to focus on today, though, are serving everyone, keeping people safe, and protecting privacy. Serving everyone is about fairness, inclusion, responsibility, obtaining the community's trust, and upholding respect for human rights, believing in people, and providing the same opportunities to everyone. And the emphasis on the word everyone, including minors. And keeping people safe and protecting privacy means protecting communities, and that includes minors from harm. And I know each and every one of you are committed to this employee code of ethics, which is one of the reasons you are so invested in Meta. However, this problem goes against the bedrock of the company. It goes against the employee code of ethics, and it also goes against the sustainable development goals. And board, as you know, these are the sustainable development goals you are working to advance. Today, I really want to focus on number 3 and 8, because these are focused on mental health and economic growth. Sustainable Development Goal number 3 ensures healthy lives and promotes well-being for all at all ages. Right now, social media's usage on youth is negatively impacting their mental health, impeding them from living mentally healthy lives, causing depression, anxieties, symptoms of ADHD, sleep deprivation, and other mental health issues in rapid rates. In a study the U.S. Surgeon General did, children and adolescents who spent 3 hours on social media were twice as likely to develop mental health issues. And when asked about the impact of social media on their body image, 46% between 13 to 17 said social media made them feel worse. And when looking at Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which promotes sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all, advertising more to youth and communities of color is actually perpetuating the problem due to the already above high rates of social media usage. This is why we propose no advertising to minors, so you can keep creating work and economic growth while also not perpetuating social media usage in minors, especially in disproportionate amounts in communities of color. It is in the heart of your company, Meta, to advocate for the health, safety, and well-being of all people, including minors, based on your values, mission, employee code of ethics, and the sustainable development goals your company is committed to. And people are growing further apart when depression and anxiety separate people and prevent them from living healthy lives, finding decent work, and growing economically when they suffer from mental health issues. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Anna to touch on some of the more ethical issues scrolling around.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara. So let's dive into why we believe Meta has an ethical obligation to cease advertising to minors under 18. If numbers could talk. A Pew Research Center survey finding underscores the ubiquity of social media use among teenagers, revealing that intensive usage transcends socioeconomic boundaries. Regardless of household income, most teenagers exhibit heavy reliance on social media platforms. Beneath the surface, of this digital connectivity lies a darker truth, one illuminated by UNICEF's sobering insights into the detrimental effects of excessive social media consumption. The passive consumption of social media content, think mindlessly scrolling through posts, has been linked to a myriad of mental health concerns, including feelings of envy, inadequacy, and diminished life satisfaction. Critics may argue that excessive social media use is a personal choice and not solely attributable to a platform design. However, Meta's duty to address potential harm still remains, particularly given its significant role in shaping online experiences for millions of users. As you know, Board of Directors, the Meta learning algorithm has harnessed powerful technologies to entice, engage, and ensnare youth for profit, allegedly violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which Moises will talk about a little bit later, by collecting data on children without proper consent. This proprietary system developed by Meta was ultimately intended to be a good thing, to improve various aspects of both Facebook and Instagram, to include better content recommendations, ad targeting, and user experience personalization. However, we're now seeing that with the data harvested from minors, Meta possesses the capability to leverage this newfound insight to extend the duration of young users' engagement on both apps, ultimately harming users. One might object that Meta is not solely responsible for this surge in social media use, as other major social media corporations also prioritize profit, driven by advertising revenue models. However, we know that Meta is using minors' user data to make it more enticing, encouraging more time on the platform. So Meta should recognize its platform's contribution to harmful mental health outcomes among young users, especially from marginalized communities who are reporting being online almost constantly, which we find is unintentionally predatory in nature. So we believe Meta has an ethical responsibility to address these negative impacts to ensure healthy users for life. So, Board of Directors, we're recommending that you take a stand. If there is evidence that Meta's platform is harming the mental health of minors, then Meta has an ethical duty to reduce or mitigate this harm. This duty extends well beyond legal obligation to encompass a broader consideration of social responsibility and human welfare. We are focusing on young people because of their vulnerability. Young users have a moral right to privacy, and we should protect their interest, which is stronger than that of adults because of their inability to understand how the platform is actually using their data. But skeptics might contend that regulating social media platforms could stifle innovation and infringe on free speech. However, we believe that all of the recent legal actions against Meta serve as a call to action. They remind us that the status quo is not immutable. So we're looking to have happy, healthy customers for life. At Meta, we exist to build communities, and both our values and in our SDG goals, we aim to ensure community members attain healthy lives and well-being regardless of their age. And we aim to promote sustained, inclusive economic growth, full of productive employment and decent work life, like Kara mentioned earlier. Yet, if minors are using platforms without fully understanding the potential negative consequences on their mental health, Meta has a responsibility to provide transparent information about these risks and take steps to mitigate them. And so we do recommend implementing age-appropriate safeguards and providing resources for users to manage their digital well-being, such as your recently launched app Headspace, which is doing very well. So critics may argue that users should exercise personal responsibility and moderation in their social media use. Yet Meta's unique position as a major tech company necessitates proactive measures to ensure this well-being first. So what's next? Prioritizing fairness and eradicating disparities in the impact of social media usage enables us to directly link outcomes to well-being of the next generations to come. Upholding the principles of ethics and information, such as transparency and informed consent, is pivotal. As discussions surrounding the ethical dimensions of social media use continue to unfold, Meta Board of Directors, you face a choice, one that demands reimagining social purpose, thriving communities, transparency, and decisive action to safeguard users' mental health. This transcends individual platforms like Meta. It's an industry-wide concern, particularly given the unparalleled scope, scale, and reach of these platforms. It's imperative for industry leaders to set and uphold the standard. We must recognize the profound issues we've just discussed as we delve into the legal landscape. So now I'd like to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Moises Mendez, who will shed light on the legal concerns facing Meta.
Thank you, Anna. Board directors, Meta, there are currently 42 states that have filed suit in federal court. So let's understand the allegations. You are being sued by multiple states' attorney led by the state of California. The lawsuit alleges that you have knowingly and intentionally designed your platform, specifically Facebook and Instagram, to be addictive to young users. You are being accused of exploiting young users for profit by maximizing their time spent on platforms, employing psychological manipulative features, and misleading the public about the safety of these features. Additionally, you're being accused of publishing misleading reports of the safety of your platforms, downplaying the adverse effect of young users. The lawsuit highlights the intentional targeting of young users while falsely representing its safe features, citing communication and strategic focus on teens. This exploitation of young users is seen as a violation of laws and regulations, particularly the Child and Teens Online Privacy Act, which prohibits internet companies from collecting personal information from users aged 13 to 16 without consent among their provisions. In Montana, there's a case of Held versus Montana, where young Montanans aged 5 to 22 sued their state over climate change, and a potential lawsuit against Meta shares striking parallels, echoing concerns regarding corporate responsibility and ethical considerations, and the potential harm inflicted upon younger generations. In both instances, there is an assertion of harm directed towards youth, whether it is environmental consequences of prioritizing fossil fuel development in Montana, or the psychological effects of addictive social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. The Montana teens argue that the state's failure to adequately address climate change jeopardizes their future well-being, highlighting the intergenerational impact of policy decisions. Likewise, Meta may encounter potential legal challenges for developing platforms that exploit young users and gather data without consent, amplifying concerns regarding mental well-being and privacy of underage individuals, thereby increasing the likelihood of broader litigation. In an internal email dated April 2019, outlined a significant strategic objective for the second quarter, aiming to achieve a remarkable 2 million hours of teen watch time on Instagram TV. The email sheds light on your deliberate effort to drive engagement among teen users, emphasizing the importance of prolonged user activity on your platforms. The specificity of your goal underscores your focus on metrics related to user engagement, particularly among younger demographics. This revelation also raises concerns about your priorities, potential implications for such ambitious targets on the well-being of young users, and the exploitation of young user profit. You have the opportunity to turn the allegations made by the state's attorney into a catalyst for positive change by taking proactive measures to address concerns about the exploitation of young users. Meta Board of Directors, you can also help mitigate the legal and reputational risks and strengthen your relationship with stakeholders, ultimately securing a first mover advantage in the social media landscape. You have the opportunity to leverage a first mover advantage, positioning yourself for future growth, becoming a leader by taking a proactive measure that is difficult for anyone to copy, thus having a significant advantage on your competitors. Through transparent communication, enhanced safety features, educational initiatives, collaboration with regulators, and investment in research and development, You can demonstrate your commitment to the well-being of young users and differentiate yourself as a responsible and trustworthy platform in the digital age. By leading the industry and addressing these critical issues, you can set a new standard for the social media platforms, positioning yourself as a leader in promoting a safer and more ethical environment for users of all ages, because it's the greatest good for the greatest number and ensures prosperous financials over the long term. Speaking of financials, I'd like to pass it over to my esteemed colleague, Kara Gervey.
Thank you, Moy. And let's talk about those financials. Board, if you implement age-based advertising restrictions here at Meta, you can lead the industry and make an initial financial investment explicitly mitigating adverse effects of targeted content on young minds while encouraging all other social media platforms to do the same. This proposal recognizes the delicate balance between privacy and security, emphasizing the importance of responsible social media practices to protect the mental well-being of all users. So let's look at the numbers. Your return on assets have increased by 5% from 2022 to 2023. Your return on equity has increased by 8% from 2022 to 2023. And while the money is steadily increasingly flowing in, the legal cases are greatly increasing in cost as well. Your general and administrative costs, which, as you know, Board, includes legal related costs, estimated fines, settlements, losses, legal fees, which have increased by 16% from 2021 to 2023. And the legal related accruals, which is accruals for estimated fines, settlements, or other losses in connection with legal and related matters, as well as other legal fees, have increased by 27% just between 2022 and 2023 alone. And not only that, almost $7 billion were paid in settlements, fines, and penalties from 2020 to 2023. So the main takeaway here, Board, is you are doing really well financially. Your revenues are strong and growing. However, these legal fees from lawsuits are also growing. And if we don't help you get this in check now, there is going to be significant problems later on. The great news, though, is the return on the investment. That would be 49% to not advertise to minors. And the ad revenue from advertising to minors is so minuscule compared to the ad revenue you are generating from other sources. So let's check these numbers out just a little bit further. To stop advertising to minors would decrease ad revenue by 0.5%. And in 2023, your CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, was paid $48.3 billion. This is 2.8% of his salary, to put it in perspective. And that is a number you can afford, Meta, and is worth setting the industry standard and stopping future lawsuits. And it also would decrease legal costs by billions of dollars, as seen on the previous slide. Which points us to the profit of asymmetry. Asymmetric reward to risk is a concept in investing that explains a situation where the potential gain from an investment are far greater than the potential losses. And Meta, you have a fiduciary responsibility to mitigate harm and create a platform that does good due to the legal and financial implications the platform can cause. If you choose to do the right thing, it increases goodwill and reputation, as well as a user's well-being. This is an opportunity for you, Meta, to lead the industry in how you respond and approach this issue and let others follow. You can set the standard. By taking this position to eliminate advertising to minors and discontinue data mining, it will safeguard your future investors, ensure future growth, and allow you to invest in young users' mental health. And this will position you for future growth. You are harming users right now, and this is not sustainable long term. It all comes down to the health of the users, the length of time users stay on the platform, and the ability for users to stay on the platform. Users are your business. In order to be financially healthy, you need them, so take care of them. Safeguarding and investing in users' mental health and eliminating advertising to minors also means investing in Meta, the future of the company. So you have a choice to make, Meta. And speaking of choices, let me pass this back to Taylor.
Thanks, Kara. So as mentioned, we're at a crossroads to do the right thing and return to our values with a challenge that every platform is facing right now, or do the right thing and build on those values, the foundation of this empire. Or do we bleed ethically, legally, or financially with our competitors, tarnishing our name, the trust we've built, and diminishing the communities of today? Meta has the resources to set the standards in this industry and become the leader of tomorrow. We just have to lead the way, because the biggest risk is not taking any risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the presenters. Thank you, team 1870. It's what a good summary of the situations that we are in. It's very timely discussion. I'm very, very glad that you have brought it to our attention. Again, I'll start with a question and then ask other judges who will be asking you questions as well. Either one of you could answer. One of the things that you said early on in the presentation is that no advertising to minors under 18. So do you mean that no advertisement of any kind, or is there any advertisement that you could make that's more focused, or more like a public service announcement, or some of these type of messages that you could that would be more helpful to our minor users?
So
Yeah. Oh, go for it, mate.
So I had my hand raised to, address that. And I would say that we would have to, first of all, agree on our definition of well-being within a social media platform. Once we define what well-being looks like, we have to define how it relates to a social media platform with people under the age of 18. So defining that, there could be services, that could be public service announcements, there could be specific services provided, but all of that's going to have to be defined well with agreed parties that have to do with the well-being of minors.
Thank you.
I was kind of wondering the same thing. Is there a way we could have a presence in advertising with the minors, but in a positive way, using athletes or good role models or whatever, and somehow, advertising mental health, exactly what you were saying before. I don't know, how would that work in your concept?
Wait, I can chime in here. One of the earlier ideas that we were rolling around in our minds was to continue to incorporate apps like Headspace, which Meta recently launched last month, which is a mindfulness app, a mental health app that they are using to try to mitigate some of the harm that they're noticing is occurring from social media. In addition to that, we were thinking that we could allow a discounted advertising model for organizations that are within the mental health space. So organizations that are directly working with youth to make mindfulness practices, meditation practices, yoga practices that individuals within school systems can also incorporate, as well as incorporating more references to time spent on social media. So similar to Netflix's, are you still watching? Are you still scrolling? So something similar to that. But that was early stages of ideation.
Question.
Thank
And
you.
this is along the lines of Moises. Moises, good job on making that distinction, because a lot of my questions have to do with, well, who's defining what, and who's the leader of what this mental health is, et cetera, et cetera. But who is currently being thought of as the leader in mental health, or if I understood the presentation correctly, eliminating, or now we're talking about perhaps making some distinctions in advertising to youth? Who's determining what the best practices are for the industry?
Yeah. So number one, we have to we have to look at this, the ones who are pointing out the problem, and those are our current psychologists and doctors who are talking about the mental effects of social media. So we would start there and asking some of the doctors and psychologists to help us come to a better understanding, especially as they understand the developmental parts of teenagers' brains. So I would say we start there, but we also start with the concept of eudaimonia. What does it look like for us to have a flourishing society? So bringing both of those concepts together and coming to the table with Meta, I think there's a conversation that could be had with terms that both parties agree on, where we define what well-being looks like for teens or minors under the age of 18.
So follow-up question, if in fact it hasn't been defined yet, then I'm not so sure if I'm understanding what it is you're proposing as to what Meta should do without knowing those definitions yet.
So we're using the definition of well-being, which is based on the SDG goals that have been agreed on in the SDG number 3. So well-being to us, it would be not having as high correlation with the use of your platform with depression, anxiety, sleep deprivation. So what we want to see is, as I believe Kara was talking about, 46% increase of body dysmorphia for teens that are using our platform. We're seeing sleep deprivation correlation with the usage time. So we would define well-being by eliminating that correlation between time spent on our platform and the incidence of mental health problems. In addition to that, we want to see youth be more actively engaging in social media, which does not have the same detrimental impacts on mental health as that mindlessly scrolling. It's the mindlessly scrolling which is causing the negative impacts on youth, not the engagement and interaction with other users on the platform.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think Mr. Silva, what you were asking originally, I don't think there is a leader right now. I think some companies have tried to take actions, but I don't think there is a leader. I think there's a void. And that's why, as 1870 Consulting, we're making this proposition so Meta can be the leader, because there's that space for a company to be a really strong leader in this industry and set the precedent for other companies to follow them.
If I may, one more follow-up, and I appreciate this. So of the numerous legal actions that have been taken against Meta, have any been adjudicated yet?
Yes, in the EU.
I'm sorry?
In the EU.
Okay, and what came out of those adjudications in terms of what companies should be done or what the industry should do?
Moy, do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
So in the EU, they required Meta allow users to pay for a paid app, which would then eliminate all advertisements and all data tracking and data mining. And so what we're seeing in the EU is that they can now, for folks who have subscribed to the platform, can no longer track those users. And so if Meta doesn't begin to take a proactive approach and preempt legal legislation here in the United States, that same thing could occur to them, meaning they could lose billions in ad revenue and billions of users' information, which is what the foundation of the business is built on. And so what's happening in the EU could happen here in the United States and in other countries, where folks get an option to buy the ad, eliminating all ads and essentially eliminating all tracking of their habits.
Thanks.
So I have two financial questions, if I may. The first one is that you mentioned ROI increases by 49%. That's a hefty number. Can you tell me how you arrived at that number? Give me some of the background to it, the color.
Yes, absolutely. I'm pulling it up right now, but give me 1 minute here.
Sure.
I have it
Yeah.
on my paper, so if you can just give me a second.
Of course.
Thank you.
Maybe while you're doing that, I'll ask the second question, and then
That would be awesome.
and then we can be efficient here. So the second financial question is: our stock closed today at $519 per share. It's a hefty price. So we have a lot of the board really has a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. So could you give me a couple talking points that would satisfy them, because they're all really looking at their 401k accounts today and traditional IRAs and saying, yippee, I can retire when I'm 39.
I don't have the numbers in front of us, but that is also why we're proposing this switch, right? So if our users, our current users, are mentally struggling with this app, we don't foresee that they will continue to get those shares at those prices, considering that there is additional legal action that's happening and changes such as the EU. For example, folks who are in the EU using that app, either the choice is you buy into the app, or you get the ads, or you stop using the app. So that would be my addition to that.
So I have to think a little bit more long term than just quarter by quarter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any thought, Kara, on the pulling that slide out?
Yeah, I'm pulling it right now. If you can just give me another second. It's right here.
And Taylor, I would agree with that. And as the consulting agency, that we're looking at this for the long term, the greatest good over the longest term. And we see also that there's a reputation. And we're now looking at the research, and the research is becoming well known. Many people, you're seeing it blast over the news. And so parents, teachers, lots of individuals are beginning to question how they're going to be engaging with the platform. And you may see a mass exodus of users because of the mental health consequences. And so what we're seeing is that by taking a proactive approach and stance, we're actually setting up Meta from a financial standpoint for long-term growth, thinking that the more that they can evolve from a business standpoint, the greater yield that they'll experience. Because right now, your only revenue is coming in from advertisements. We think that you can expand and innovate beyond that business model.
Thank you.
And I do have the answer to your other question. I appreciate you giving me a minute here to pull it up. So thank you. So what we did here was we took the amount of money that Meta paid in fines and penalties and payouts, and we subtracted the ad revenue that they were generating just from minors. So from people under the age of 18. So we subtracted that from the legal fines and payouts for those legal cases. Does that make sense? And then we divided it by the amount of money that they would have taken in from ad revenue for minors. And that's how we got 49%.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
If I could, I've got a couple of questions. The first one is you said no more advertising to minors, and you've given us that the cost loss through revenue. Did you run any numbers as far as why shouldn't we just ban all minors from using our platform altogether? What would that cause us in initial losses, and what would that cause us as far as once they became adults? Would they still want to use our platforms or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reason we didn't do that is because We don't want to create like bad business. And I feel like, especially I'm a young adult, as you probably can guess, and coming from recently being a minor, I feel like that would be, we don't want to deter people from using Meta. We want it to be a positive thing. We want people to use the platform. We want to get business. We want the board to have business. We want the company to have business. So we want to do this in as positive of a light as possible. And so that's why we didn't do it. We don't want it to be a negative experience for people. And if we do that to people when they're young, they're probably not going to want to go and open up an account on a Meta platform when they're an adult if they weren't allowed to use it when they were younger. So that's why we didn't want to entertain that option.
Okay, and to that side is that if they are, what kind of research shows that if we stop advertising to them, how much will that affect the amount of usage and the same types of mental health issues that we're seeing? How can that be equated to just ads versus the content that is given by the other members of the community?
Great question. So one of the things that we are seeing in addition to ads is that with the use of data mining, we can find content based on the algorithm that tends to entice users to stay on the platform longer, making it feel a little bit more addictive, similar to the folks at a slot machine where you're scrolling. And so the algorithm finds ways to continue to recommend content, both sponsored ads and folks that young users might be suggested to follow or content that they might be interested in. And so by choosing this path and eliminating this content, both in the form of ads and recommended content, you're going to decrease the time spent on the platform. It would, in essence, bring the platform for 18-year-olds and under back down to the version that we all were on 10 years ago, where you would see what your friends were up to. And then after you were done, at the bottom of your feed, your scroll was over. And it's not that mindlessly scrolling for 2, 3, 4 hours a day because of continuation of the content generated based on the algorithm. And that wasn't a complete answer to your question because there is also the mental health implications, but I'd be willing to pass it off to any of my colleagues.
I think I'd add that it is, again, that twofold, right? The data mining that is creating the advertisement, which again, the earlier number we mentioned was about 49% that folks have, or I should say minors have, negative feelings about their own body, right? You could maybe point that to influencers who are telling them what brands and what things to use so they could feel like that influencer. And again, that is advertising that we are probably gaining funds from. But there are some negative feedback that we're getting, not necessarily on Meta about advertising, but there's been recent news about TikTok and how they've recently added a TikTok store. And there are some users that are starting to share that it just feels like this shopping and advertising like slot machine, right? And that's not giving us the positive stand that we want Meta, or we think Meta should be taking, right? We want long-term users. As Anna said, the folks who started using it 10 years ago, they're still using it. Is that because of how the platform initially started up? When you look at younger generations, they're not using our platform like they used to. They're now on TikTok, right? If we changed our ways, would they come back to this platform? Would they continue to use it as us? To be decided, but we're interested to find out with you.
Thank you.
Question now, what are the implications to Meta should they not implement your recommendations? And somewhat tied to that, what's the risk of a competitor taking that lead, taking that first mover position going forward?
Well, one of the one of the questions that Tom had asked about long-term users and the fiduciary responsibility for long-term users is the fact that long-term users won't be around if they don't have the mental health and bandwidth to be around. So the longevity of making some of these decisions are going to help long-term for the long run of the company and not necessarily just the short term.
Wouldn't that apply to all companies in the space?
Yes, and that's why we're recommending that Meta be the first one to take the preemptive approach and be the first mover so that they could have not only the advantage, but ultimately build trust and credibility with not only its users, but also its stakeholders. Again, going back to that SDG goal, understanding the commitment that they're making to our SDG goals.
So what kind of a financial hit do you think the company would take if they do not move out on this? And again, if a competitor does?
Yeah, Kara, you alluded to that. Could you reiterate that there is that financial risk if they didn't move forward?
Yeah. So like I stated earlier, they would be hit with legal fines, legal fees, lawsuits, and that would take them down. That would continue to pull them down.
And Meta, we know that you want to preempt regulation, right? A business model, you want to ultimately be in charge of your revenues and how you do business. And if we don't take decisive action now, the regulations are going to be coming, whether it's this year or next year or in 5 years. And ultimately that's going to impact our revenues because regulation is going to tell us how to do our business and we want to conduct our own business. So for the long run, it makes sense for us to choose this action so that we can choose how we're going to evolve and not be told how to evolve through regulation.
Well, thank you so much. I know we have kept you here, Team 1870, for a long time. It's been over 20 minutes of Q&A. So thank you for being gracious and sharing your time with us. And now kind of some more personal feedback. I really loved your presentation, the way it was structured. Your presentation deck was clean, concise. You had the 1870 on it, so I knew who the team was as you were talking from the slide deck. All of you got to talk and we got to know you a little bit better. So again, really, really well put together and thought presentation.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you did an exceptional job. I particularly loved at the beginning when you were talking about focusing on community and shifting from the individual. I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really great insight for these folks. And I also really like, Moises, when you were talking about being a catalyst for positive change. That's language that is that business people would want to hear, to have it be about what can we actively do to be have this company be successful and be positive, because we had that responsibility. I also agree with my colleagues in that your slides were super clean. The handoff between you, your style was very engaging. I think the volume of questions that you received, I can't speak for my other colleagues, but I think it drew us in to want to have more of a conversation than, oh, this is a presentation. So and that's not easy to do. Okay. So you did very, very well on that, exceptionally. Thank you.
Great job, guys. I really enjoyed it. I'm not so sure. I'm not on social media, so I'm not so sure if that helped me or hurt me with my questions towards your presentation.
Well, you are the unicorn then if you're not on social media, Alondra.
I guess I can be 4.5 billion and one if I join today, but
I'm not on social media either, so I work outliers with you.
I can share with you what I enjoy very much in these types of meetings and presentations, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Again, speak for myself, is I like to see numbers when either projections or some source of information is cited. I want to know who's cited, who's the source of the information. If you come up with numbers, Kara, as you did in your presentation, that's really great for me to the extent that those were solid numbers. Tom, I think, rightfully questioned one of them because it seemed a little bit high. But from my side, I can't get enough numbers to back up your data, whatever it is. And I would also suggest, and not that I came out today, but I'm going to presume you did, but be prepared for the absolute worst questions that you can get from anyone that really is going to try to put you in a corner, and rightfully so. I'm sure you've heard of the cup half empty, half full. I'm not worried about the half that's full. I'm worried about the half that's empty, because that's where the questions are. That's where the opportunities are. So great job. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Alonso.
That's awesome. As you could tell, we could talk to you all evening, but we have to let you go and move on with your day. And again, really want on behalf of all of the judges, I would love to thank you. You did a great job. Go and rest, and goodbye.
Thank you.
So
Thank
Jennifer,